Hello, everyone. In this demonstration, I will show how developers can integrate their systems with OneCUSA using the Request to Pay workflow. To demonstrate this integration, I built a simple application called School Fees Payment, which allows students or parents to pay school fees digitally. In this first section, I will demonstrate the system working in live mode, and afterwards, I will walk through the technical integration steps used to build it. The user begins by searching for a student using their registration number. Once the student is found, the system displays the student's details and the available fees that can be paid. The user can then select the fees they want to pay, for example, tuition fees or bus fees. When the user proceeds with payment, the system requests a timed account number, commonly known as a TAN, from OneCUSA. The TAN is displayed to the user and is used to complete the payment using a bank or mobile wallet. Once the payment is completed, the system waits for an official transaction notification from OneCUSA. When the notification is received and verified, the payment status is updated and the receipt is displayed. Let's walk through the integration flow behind the scenes. Integrating with OneCUSA using Request to Pay typically follows these steps. First, the backend authenticates with OneCUSA to obtain an access token. Second, the backend initiates a Request to Pay transaction to generate a TAN. Third, the customer completes the payment using that TAN. Fourth, OneCUSA sends a transaction notification via webhook. Finally, the backend verifies the transaction and updates the payment status in the system. This diagram illustrates the full payment flow in the system. On the left side, we have the front end, where the user searches for a student, selects the fees, and proceeds with payment. The front end then sends a request to the back end. The back end is responsible for securely communicating with OneCUSA. First, the back end requests an access token from OneCUSA. After authentication, the back end initiates a Request to Pay transaction, which generates the timed account number. This TAN is then returned to the front end and displayed to the user. The customer then makes the payment through their bank or mobile network operator. Once the payment is processed, OneCUSA sends a transaction notification webhook to the backend. The backend then matches the transaction using the TAN and reference number, updates the payment status, and the front end finally displays the payment receipt. Let's now look at the official documentation for this integration. The first step when integrating with OneCUSA is to obtain an access token. The access token is required for authenticating API requests to the OneCUSA platform. This request is made using the GetAccessToken endpoint, where the backend sends the API credentials and receives a token that allows it to communicate securely with the platform. After authentication, the next step is initiating a Request to Pay transaction. This endpoint generates the timed account number, which the customer uses to complete the payment. The request includes details such as the merchant account number, the transaction amount, and a reference number for the payment. After initiating payments, the next step is configuring a webhook callback in the OneCUSA merchant portal. In the developer section of the portal, we register a callback URL that OneCUSA will use to send transaction notifications. This webhook allows our backend to receive real-time updates when payments are completed. The webhook listens for events defined in the OneCUSA documentation. In this example, we are listening for the Request to Pay success event, which indicates that a payment has been successfully completed. When this event occurs, OneCUSA sends a payload containing important transaction information, including the TAN, reference number, and transaction reference number. In the OneCUSA documentation, we can see the different webhook events that can be sent to our system. One of the most important events for this integration is the request to pay success event with the event code payRequest.success. This event is triggered after the payment has been successfully processed and the funds have been credited to the merchant account. In other words, when our backend receives this event, it means the payment has been completed successfully, and we can safely mark the transaction as successful in our system. When OneCUSA sends a webhook notification, it includes a payload containing important transaction details. This payload provides all the information needed for the backend system to identify and verify the transaction. The field, called source reference number, represents the reference generated by the bank or mobile network operator used to make the payment. This value usually comes from the payment channel itself, such as the customer's bank or mobile wallet provider. The field called transaction reference number is generated by OneCUSA. This serves as a unique transaction identifier within the OneCUSA platform. Inside the metadata section, we can see the reference number. This value is generated by our own system when we initiate the request to pay transaction. In the sandbox environment, developers can test their integration with OneCUSA without using real money. After the TAN is generated, the payment can be simulated using the Simulate Accept Request to Pay endpoint provided in the documentation under Fake Data. This endpoint allows developers to send fake transaction data to simulate a customer completing the payment. When this simulation request is executed, the OneCUSA sandbox processes it as if a real payment had occurred. The platform then triggers the same transaction notification webhook that would be sent during a real transaction. Our backend receives this transaction notification, verifies the transaction details using the timed account number and reference number, and updates the payment status in the system. This allows developers to fully test the entire payment workflow, from TAN generation to webhook confirmation, before moving to production. When you are satisfied with the test results using the sandbox, you can activate your production environment in the OneCUSA web portal by submitting KYC details for compliance as required by our regulator.